Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to Trust and Believe. I'm your host, Shaun T. And today, as you can see, we are in a brand new space, which I'm so excited about. We have our first in-person guest in our, what I like to call our casita studio, an incredible human that I met while working out at the gym and didn't know that we were going to have this conversation when I first met him, but I'm so excited. Today, we're going to enhance your ability to trust and believe in the power of cannabis. Now, I know there's a lot of people out there that's like, hold on, stop the phone. But I always say when something makes you uncomfortable, you have to listen a little bit more. We're going to talk about how it can enhance your mental health through Charles's story and his personal struggles. I know you're going to be really inspired. So get ready to trust and believe.
Somebody say hell yeah!
What's up?
He's better than Oprah.
Come on, y'all. This is Shaun T, and it's time to trust and believe.
Charles, what's up?
Shaun, what's up, boss?
I want to start by saying, are you high right now?
Yes, I am.
Good. I just want to, get it out the way because I think that my kind of personal story, I told last year in my podcast that I was going through a lot of anxiety and I was just like, you know what? Let me go to a place here in Arizona because it's legal here. I was like, let me get some gummies. And believe it or not, it really helped me get out of my head. I'm not what I like to say, a pro or professional in cannabis, but I do know that it helped me a little bit, just like relax and kind of like get rid of a lot of my anxiety. But I want to talk to our guest today about your story and how cannabis has helped you out. I know you've been in the fitness industry for 3 decades, which is really amazing. And I know you don't like being called a celebrity trainer. However, he's a celebrity trainer. We won't name drop yet because this is about your story. So can you just tell us really how you came into the power of cannabis?
Yeah, no, thank you so much. And again, that introduction was far better than I deserve. But as far as cannabis and how I got into the space, very similar to you. Anxiety and depression have always kind of run rampant in my life. They've always kind of, been at the flagship. So early on, I was kind of encouraged by doctors to medicate. And I've always been, like I want to be full disclosure. I'm 43 years old. Cannabis for me is purely medicinal, right? And when I started off on this journey, I never knew that it would have this effect, right? So anyways, backpedaling back, I was prescribed, they were benzodiazepines, which are anti-anxiety medications, because at the time I was a new car director in the auto industry. I was doing a myriad of things. I was modeling, I was training, I was a new dad. So I had a lot of responsibilities and my dis-ease was just so high, my anxiety. So I was prescribed Xanax and for me, it was awesome, because all the noise, which, for somebody like me with anxiety, there's always a lot of noise and distraction. It just helped it alleviated like day one, But with the kind of person I am, I'm very A-type. I love that feeling. I love to not have that. So like I'm always excessive, right? Mm-hmm. So with that, I was very excessive and it dulled it out. And I didn't realize that it had become an addiction. It no longer became something that I was using to kind of palliate and alleviate. It became my addiction. Kind of losing sense of a lot of things that I knew to be me. I wasn't big on my appearance, which I'm very, very big on my appearance. A lot of other things I was losing sight of. And I was like, I want to kind of get back, and what actually happened, because I'm kind of going to go all over the map. I'd started coaching kids, right? And all my kids looked at me as like this like Marvel hero, like this icon. And so I'm thinking everything's all well and good and nobody really knows because I'm really good at kind of portraying this image. And one of the parents was like, hey, real quick before practice, do you think you and I can talk, big coach? I'm like, yeah, let's talk. So he starts to go over to me about this story, this story about like, hey, when he was in the league, they would eat peanuts. And I'm like, okay, and I'm gonna listen to him. And he's like, you eat peanuts because peanuts are very distinctive smell. I'm like, okay. And I'm listening. He goes, yeah, because if you ever get pulled over, that's the only thing that masks alcohol. And I'm like, okay. He goes, yeah, coach, we cool. We all like to drink, but, it's kind of been brought to my attention that the kids smell alcohol on you. Crumple. Then I realized that I was no longer like that guy, all that. So then I started reading, very heavily about cannabis and about what it does, So cannabis is a very weird thing, right? The strain types and everything about it, it's very much personality based. It's, there's so many different strain types out there. So all of them take on different personalities. So my first, I'd say, just trek down that journey was very hard to navigate, because when I drank and when I medicated my other way, everything was always the same. I took my Xanax, I always felt the same. I drank, I always felt the same. But with
When you say the same, you mean the same feeling, like it gave you that same feeling every time of like what?
like every single time. So like I'm using it, and we talked about for mental health and anxiety. So every single time I'd have my fits or I'd have anxiety creep up, it was the way it helped to alleviate it, so with alcohol, it was the same. It just, it allowed me to not feel the anxiety, not to feel the, just the, the depression, but allowed me to be very functional, right? The problem with alcohol is it's a depressant. So when you do drink, and you have, those kind of disease, the problems that I have, the challenges, it brings you even further down. Also, you can't medicate, you can't, and again, it's called adulting now, but a lot of us will, if we have, these conditions, will medicate with, alcohol as well. We'll kind of, double the two, right? And it's really bad. It's really bad. Respiratory depression can happen. And what I didn't realize is you can die, right? You can die, day one. So, all these things were being brought to my attention, and I didn't want to go down the way that I was, and I had lost a lot of friends. I lost a lot of friends, so I had to figure a way to kind of take back, kind of get back to who I was, because I wasn't training, I wasn't out and about. I really lost me. The father that I was kind of, was very poor and toxic. I was very horrible in my relationships. So cannabis gave me all that back. What cannabis is, and people don't realize this. And again, it's very tough because media they stigmatize it, but it's an ego suppression, with guys, especially guys like me, ego's a big thing, man. You want to lead with ego. You want to, let everybody know who you are. With cannabis, you don't have that. It suppresses that, like, so you always see me smiling, and you even hear it in my voice. Like by nature, inside, I'm a very, very energetic, very dynamic type person. So the cannabis kind of keeps that guy at bay. I call it a-hole suppression. Is what my lady calls it. She's like, it keeps that at bay.
So when you say dynamic, it's less about like, oh, I'm dynamic and positive, and it's more about like, I get hard, or I get like what some people call like male chauvinistic.
100%. Hard is like, I'd say is probably the most apt description for how I am. Very hard, very rigid. And it's because of my upbringing, like I had very, very, typical traditional Black upbringing, very hard, like everything is about being a male, it's about that male expression. You don't show any kind of weaknesses or any kind of emotion. That's not, so like, again, that model, that image is not sustainable. It doesn't
Let's talk
last.
about that for a second, because I think as a Black male in Black culture, we were taught not to cry. I think a lot of men in general, but I feel like in our culture, it really is a sign of weakness, which then kind of transitions into you have to be able to fight. And, walking away from a fight was just not an option. You had to buck up, and so the reason why I wanted to say that is because I think people might hear your story and they hear like, oh, there were struggles with alcohol, there were struggles with this, but there's a backstory to why you even get there, and I talk about mental health a lot. And when people are struggling with something, there was probably a precursor to get you to that point where you were unable to manage your emotions in a way that could have been, for lack of a better way, a bit more positive, on the side of positivity. Whereas when you're taught at a young age. Scott and I are watching Euphoria. Did you see Euphoria?
I've a lot of my athletes talk heavily about it. I have to.
You have
I've
to
heard
watch it
yeah.
because in a way, there's a black kid in the movie who went to college for football, and his dad actually in a scene says you have to suppress those emotions and make them come out in the next play. But what his dad didn't realize is he did that in everything in his life, and so he ended up having sex with his girlfriend. He had gotten initiated by the football team. They had walked in while he was having sex with his girlfriend in this scene, and they put him on the floor, and they didn't rape him necessarily, but he was naked. They came in jockstrap. It was like very humiliating and degrading. And so he went into the bathroom really angry, and then he came out the bathroom, and instead of making love to his girlfriend, he basically, I don't want to say he raped her, but it was like very aggressive, like non-connected. And the whole thing stemmed from his dad just being like, bottle up your emotions and you let it out in other ways. So it was just like, it's really interesting how you say that and you talk about our culture, because male fathers in general don't understand that you can teach your kid to be strong without teaching them to like hide from their emotions. Because then when you have to do it as an adult, you used the word adulting earlier. When you have to do it as an adult, you don't really know how to navigate those emotions. I just wanted to talk about that because I just think that's really interesting for context, because there are people listening that could still be judging just the fact that you smoke weed or however you do it, and not understanding the context that got you there.
There's so many points that you hit on that I love. I really want to go heavily into the fact of how it's viewed and the past trauma that even started to even get me there, to why I'd have to suppress the ego with something like cannabis, to what that looks like, what it looks like, handling some of those really hard topics about what do you do to manage those emotions, because our culture, we are very emotional, and I think that it's always poorly interpreted, for lack of better words. And I think largely that has to do with the fact that the interpretation that a lot of people have is from their view. One of the things that I'd say, and I'm very incredibly grateful, and I wasn't at the time when I was young coming up, is my upbringing, right? I didn't grow up in a categorically black area. I grew up, I guess I'd say, we joke about it. I call myself the Black Robert Kiyosaki. Like I only grew up with Caucasians, with whites. Like I never grew up with anybody black. I only saw black people when I went back home. That was my father. And I kind of cursed him at the time because it was so hard. I mean, like me coming up, I'm 43, in the 80s, 90s, like it wasn't cool. It was only cool to be black towards the end, right? And again, I'm a black guy, skinny, scrawny, with glasses. At the time, the only dude at that time would have been like Steve Urkel. He was horrible.
I didn't even think about that.
Horrible. Like, so what I got, and just the torment, and just, it was tough. So like, just to suppress that, microaggression, all these terms were non-existent when I was coming up. So you just deal with it. You just figure, well, that's the way it is. So later on, what happens is you get into like this different landscape that you have to navigate, but you still are like inundated with all this trauma. Like you're almost bogged over with trauma. Like you're walking over and you're just bumping into things and just spilling out these traumas, and people don't even realize. You don't even realize. So it's funny now, visibly, I can see athletes, I can see actors, I can see it like Will Smith. I'm not going to go into any diatribe because, again, I'm sure I'm judged, but I see what that is and I understand. I'm like, I understand you. I was you. I was you in that point. And I didn't deal with it. I didn't understand how to suppress it. And then that's what happened. So without going into a lot of context, but yeah.
I like context.
Yeah, man.
Just because, I mean, it just adds color to like people's ability to connect beyond just like the message. And the reason why I say that a lot and people judge cannabis, because like even my husband, for instance, he still hears marijuana and he thinks, Nancy Reagan in the 1980s, just say no to drugs, not understanding the benefits. But I guess my next question would be, what was your introduction to cannabis? And like, what was the process of how it went from wherever it was introduced to you to actually becoming something that really aided in your progress?
Yeah. So, introduction, like I had it kind of brought to my attention by a few different people. There's other athletes and other people like who I'd seen, and they talked about, like, I remember, again, being in track, hearing Usain Bolt talk about it. And again, I have a lot of my Jamaican friends and they talk about, yeah, brother, you need to. I'm like, yeah, okay, maybe. But the thing about it is, again, ego. I don't want to lose control. And when I seen the guys, and traditionally a lot of the brothers that I knew, they were always just seemed like just knocked out. Like they
Like
almost seemed
spaced out. Yeah.
spaced or comatose, right?
Yes.
So, again, that's why when you said, are you high? I wanted to, like, absolutely. Like, I guess, again, I hate that word medicated or elevated is what I call people, or enhanced is what we call it in the scene. Because the ones that categorically, like if you watch Mike Tyson's podcast, Mike's Hot
Yeah.
Box, no disrespect, Mike, but they're all like, just zoned. Okay. And the problem that I have is it perpetuates the stigma, and people are like, yeah, see, that's why. But if you watch Joe Rogan, conversely on the other side,
Yeah.
they're all elevated, and he's doing exactly what I'm doing right now. It's a sativa. It's
I mean, I literally would not be able to tell, like, you're traditionally have, either smoked marijuana or like it's literally impossible, for me to look at you and sit here with you. That's why I had to ask.
man, like, to the point where, like, I think that if somebody else tried to like duplicate what I did, they'd be, because it's medicinal for me. You're somebody who has diabetes, their insulin. I couldn't take their insulin. I would die, because again, I look at it because it is very medicinal. So even my lady and I, she's very much like you. Dee was a 17-year police officer from Australia.
Wow. Yeah.
So how she sees it, it's not even legal in their country. So even her trying to have that conversation with their countrymen is like, what? So like, even with her, I'm like, she'll have this with people, and she'll try to, kind of compare it. I'm like, babe, the way you have to compare it is tell people, like, listen, somebody's diabetic, right? Can you imagine them not being able to have their insulin? It changes the way the conversation, as opposed to like, yeah, hey, so you like to drink, right? Right. Well, Charles likes to, it's not the same thing. You and I both have a nervous system, right?
Right.
You have a lymphatic system.
Right.
You also have an ECS, which is an echocannabinoid system we all have. That's why your body and certain people can consume the amount of cannabis and be functional. They're not walking around aimlessly, right? Or those athletes, those high-level athletes that I can't talk names, that are able to, smoke and consume and kill it in the game. Like, I knew guys, brothers all the time, like, bro, I could not do what you do and be functional, or even talk like I can't talk. Like, everybody's like, there's no way I could talk like you talk.
There's
or
no
be
way.
like you.
Listen to me. There is no way. I would be like 7 seconds in forgetting what I was going to say 7 seconds ago. That's why it's fascinating for me, because, I've heard, and we can talk about this, I heard sativa and like indica, but for me, I mean, indica, the nighttime one, I call it the purple purple one. I definitely
Yes.
get super sleepy. But when someone told me once, like, I think they smoke, sativa before they go to the gym, I'm like, there's literally no way. Like, for me right now, my understanding of it and my past experience, I'm like, there's no way I can go to the gym and be elevated. I don't know how much you know scientifically about it, but how are people able to, like, when I hear people say, yeah, like, I'm high at the gym all the time, like people at our gym, I'm like, what?
Yeah.
I'm like, huh? I use the word elevated because I know you don't like the
I
word
love
high,
that.
but
Love it.
teach me, how is this happening?
On a heavy day, leg day, or even say your boot camp, that was so intense. And your body is producing all this lactate. Lactate is like a byproduct, right? That's the stress product that your muscles release. That makes it hard to even move, right? That's that waste that makes it almost feel like, you can't function.
Everything's heavy. Yeah.
You've heard of a strain called Hindu Kush, right?
Yes. Yes.
The Sherpas, little guys, they'd be in India and they'd have to ascend up these mountains, right? They're little people. You've seen them. Well, they'd have these bags to do that, and to even be able to take that load, they would smoke Hindu Kush. So their body, what it would do is it would suppress that inflammation their bodies would release. and it'll enable them to be able to go up there. Like for years and years, there's so many cultures that have been doing this, but we're now starting to get it. So like there's marathon athletes that will take it on longer marathon intervals. There's bicyclists that I know. There's sprinters. There's lifters. So on my heavy days, my leg days, the days that I feel like I cannot get through, it boosts my cognition, focus, but it also gets me through that point where I'm like, nah. Like I saw a few of your instructors looking over like, what's this guy on? Like, because, again, that's not my thing, but I'm powering
You were
through.
slaying again.
Bruh, come on. I'm like, Brittany, give me more. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Turn me up. So like, no, it is, man. It's something different. And I'd encourage anybody that doesn't, believe in it to try it. And, I'm even doing, classes and different things to even put people through, to even help them navigate that.
Use the word medicinal.
Mm-hmm.
I think obviously most people know now you can get it in the States that you can get it, medicinally.
Sure.
I know before we voted in Arizona where it could be legal, you had to go to like a doctor, and now they have, I don't know if you call them stores or shops or what do you call them?
Dispensaries.
There it is. I don't even know the lingo. I've been to one. Explain the process, and then I want to go back into a little more mental health after this, but like explain the process.
Yeah. So like you can do it one or two ways. Like, so now because it is recreational, it is legal here, you can go, and I believe it's a gram. It's a full gram that, you can, a recreational person can have. And that means all you'd have to have is your ID. You have to be over, I think it's 21, right? 21, and you just go in there and you get, either, your consumable, right? You can get an edible, or you can get, a flower, and they have everything there. Like now it's kind of nice because any dispensary that you go to have a bud tender, and they are fairly educated with the different ways to consume, and they'll tell you, you just kind of tell them what you're looking for. And again, when I say medicinal, like you don't go to your liquor store and you don't say, yo, man, I'm just like having a hard day, right? Like, oh, girl, just split up with me. What do you got, right? Oh, yeah,
Right.
yo, here's his JD. No, he doesn't do that. But like it is that way in cannabis. Like you can go over and say, yo, man, I haven't slept. And when I went out, and I first started working at the dispensary, like this, when it was medicinal, the only way you can do it was you had to go see a doctor. You had to tell them like, what had happened, and they would give you a card, so the people that I seen were soldiers that had PTSD, just different things that they had. There was cancer patients that were, that had it. There were people who have MS and just a myriad of different things that, cannabis helps. So like all my patients that would come in, I got to learn and got to understand ways that they were utilizing it to help them get through their days and their disease.
That process, because I remember when I went to the dispensary, I got in line, they're like, oh, what can I help you with? And I'm like,
yeah,
like, and then, I did. I was like, I'm like really stressed. I was like, I'm not sleeping that well. And I was just like, my mind is always like kind of going, whatever. When people drink alcohol, they call them a lightweight, but for me, I had to use that term. I can't do too much before I feel like I'm not like out of it, but I just don't like feeling that uneasiness.
Mm-hmm.
And, I would take like a indica, the purple thing. And I'm less knowledgeable than you, but I would wake up the next day and I would still feel it.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And I was just like, I do not want to feel, I was like, give me the least amount possible. And it was a gummy,
mm-hmm.
and it was still too much. Like I could only do like maybe a quarter of it where I can just feel like chill. So what is the best way?
And it's tough, and I love, my lady is the same way. And there's certain people who are very sensitive. The thing that I would say is with an edible, it is always tough, right? Because again, you don't know how it is. You don't know how much disbursement of the cannabis you're going to get into your system. If it does happen, again, it can, the next day there might be some residual, like nausea. What I always tell people is like CBD, which is like the other constituent. It's like probably the more well-known. It's the one that you can get anywhere. You can buy it on Amazon and all that kind of stuff. That's kind of the byproduct that's very safe. And what it does is it has all the benefits with the non-psychoactive effects. So you can take CBD to help you with your anxiety. You can take CBD to help you with your pain. For whatever it is to me, and again, it just depends on the person. I think that you need the THC to kind of the entourage to kind of buffer on that stronger impact for a guy like me.
All right, so let's go back to the mental health stuff. I have one question for you, and then I'll go in. So obviously, I know that it's fully medicinal for you, and it helps you thrive. Obviously, do you pair it with therapy, like talk therapy, or like how has your experience been with that, and comparing it to or combining the two, I should say?
Yeah, no, man, I'm so glad that you asked me that. I want to go back to this. I think that every bit of usage is always therapeutic. Like it's right now in this space where we're trying to combat just different poor terminologies, right? You know, like recreational versus medicinal, recreational versus therapeutic use. I feel like if anybody uses cannabis for whatever reason it is, like, hey, you're feeling a little uptight and you need to unwind, there's a therapeutic use there, right? I think that everybody, for some reason, opposed to, again, the alcohol, and I don't want to kind of dog on the, what it is, but alcohol is completely different. You want to just tune out, and it never has the effect that you ever intended to. I would absolutely combine it with talk therapy. Like right now, the fact that even I told you, or we kind of talked on it lightly, like I haven't really seen my daughter much, that makes me very depressive. And then I don't want to talk, and then I want to kind of suppress my emotions and harbor them in. I'll smoke a little bit, and then I'll be able to talk and emote the feelings and just be more expressive. It also allows me to do it without just this surge of emotion. Like, sometimes you ever had different things that you're trying to deal with, going through your therapy or in your sessions, going through your trauma, and you can't get past that hurdle or that block because there's just too much emotion attached to it.
Yes.
So like I've had so many of those, and I couldn't get past those emotional hurdles, like things that I had. You said, where is the origin of that? I think about the genesis for how this come with my father and all that. I couldn't even say that before, Shaun, like without breaking down. Like I can't even say my daughters were without breaking down. But the cannabis allows me to deal with those really hard topics without any emotion and just see them for what they are.
And when it comes to therapy or talking about it or recognizing things, I think that the other option is what a lot of people do is they run away from the issue. What are the properties of, marijuana, if you will, that like allows that kind of barrier, like to go down? Because there are so many people that I know that are like, I'm not going to therapy because I don't want to face X, Y, and Z, or I don't want to relive the pain. What is the thing in there that like releases that fear so that you can kind of open up? Do you know?
Yeah. And it's really tough because, we talk a lot about that. Like, what is it, that thing that allows that to happen? And again, I don't know what within the constituent, but I think a lot of it has to do with what it suppresses. I think about what it does is more as what's in it. It dulls testosterone, so, I think about for a lot of the guys that I know that take it, that smoke it in large dose are raging, guys, right? So just that suppression of testosterone, it does have psychoactive properties, right? So psychoactive properties, whereas like a lot of times we're attached to seeing certain things, we get stuck in a pattern. And I remember hearing you say that in your podcast, and we can't, detach from it. Cannabis helps you do that, with the psychoactive effect. You're seeing something from a completely different landscape than you'd ever, see it.
Yeah. And I think that it's kind of comparing it to alcohol. Alcohol definitely like just, you just go to a place of like, and it is a depressant. I mean, obviously, when I drink, once I have a couple, I'm like good. Like right. I wouldn't say commend people because I'm not an alcohol bully. I'm like, if you're gonna have a good ass time, like go have a good ass time. But I truly do not know how people go like get so lit and they're not like affected by it. But it is true. Like if I eat a edible at the right amount, if I like break it into a third, it's like it's more chill. Like, but again, I have to find the right one, which is, I guess I'm just like comparing the fun of alcohol, you know, the combination of marijuana. We actually went on vacation when it was like a few months ago. It was October. And so we get off the plane. So I didn't want to drink. I actually didn't want to drink because I, like you seen me in the gym and I'm like in it. Like
Yes.
I'm really focused. I ended up drinking. But I didn't want to drink. And I was like, I wanted to take some of my edibles with me, but I was like so afraid because it was going to Mexico and I just don't know the rules or whatever. So we get off the plane and we're at baggage claim and we're sitting there, there's a dog like kind of like walking around smelling everything. And there was a guy sitting on the baggage claim belt, the officer who was like, walking with the dog. The dog smelled, went into this dude's bag. I swear he had a bag. It was like a huge bag of marijuana. And they just took it from him. Like he didn't get in trouble. Anyway, moving on. I still want to understand how you work out. If I'm going for it in the gym, I just don't. I'm on this. I don't know how I would be able to function with this. Like you got to help me a little bit.
It's weird, man. Like a lot of times when you're there, are there times that you don't want to be there?
No.
Okay. How about that? Are there times when it's harder than most to get through?
Yes. When I'm doing legs, and my trainer, when I'm doing legs, I'm like, this is a nightmare.
Bruh. So like those parts, like you don't care, bro. Like you just don't, you're so zoned in and you're so focused. Like, in fact, like I want to say even the quality of your lifts is better. Even the quality of your lifts is better.
Well, I forget how many reps.
You might not. So like, again, reps and sets, like you're not really cognizant of those things, but like even the quality of your lifts is better. Even the quality. I promise you. Everybody that I go through, like, again, you have to also like, there are certain people who are like, man, this is so good. I want to go where you go. I'm like, no, don't ride with this guy. This is, you don't want to go on this one. And then you go take it too far. And if that does happen, like I said, there is ways that you can alleviate it. Like if you drink too much alcohol, you're on that ride.
That you got 3 ounces an hour.
You're on
like you're on the ride. It takes 3 ounces an hour for it to leave your system.
It does.
You through your liver.
Well, and the other thing that, again, us in the scene, we don't realize is like, I know all these guys are like, yeah, I only drink this. I don't have any fillers, but they don't know why they're getting fat. What does hard alcohol convert to? Metabolism into sugar. So I tell everybody what I like about what I do is I would, back in the day, modeling, whatever, going hard, how we get it back in the day, I would drink vodka, nothing with no fillers. And then the next day I couldn't do that. Like it wasn't maintainable, right? I felt it. This, I might go a half ounce. I might do something crazy, but the next day I can maintain, so the difference is like when you drink, after a while, your body develops a what? Tolerance.
Yeah, there it is.
Right. So I get a tolerance for a little bit. Like, so say I get a tolerance for drinking straight, 151, no chaser. I'm telling you, I'm bringing this to a guy who I know myself. And then that tolerance gets high enough. So after a while, what is it doing now? It's attacking my kidneys. It's attacking my liver, right? I may be able to tolerate the amount, but my body's not able to tolerate the toxicity, right? So after a certain while, like other things start to give up, right? Opposed to, let's look at on the side with cannabis. I start smoking. I smoke a little bit. I develop a tolerance. It's not called a tolerance. It's called tachyphylaxis. That's the amount that my body consumes before, like, I'm no longer able to get the medicinal property, right? So if that happens, I just need to dose that more. Well, what happens if I do more? Nothing. My body just can no longer take it. I can no longer upregulate it, and that's it. Like, I can't die. No one's ever died in all the years of consumption.
Right. I just want to let y'all know I'm merely a vessel of information, okay? And this is like this conversation I'm living for because I just think it's one of those things that I remember when I was in high school and, when drugs are not good for you, but when marijuana was bad, right? And so I remember, I'm not going to say my friend's name, even though I haven't talked to her since I left high school, But I remember a friend saying, yeah, like my parents don't think I know, but they're in their bathroom, in their bedroom smoking every night. And I'm just like, so I used to think like, oh my gosh, that is like so bad. That is like so crazy. And now, and you have kids. I have the mindset of my high school age, and then I have a husband who's like, just say no to drugs.
Yeah.
So if I do take like an edible, I'm like, oh my God, my kids are sleeping. They're 5. Okay, I got to stop doing this by the time that they're 10. Like, I'm going through all this. I know, but I'm saying I'm going through all this. That's why I'm just saying to the people out there, I'm merely a vessel of information. And I believe that if it's legal in your area and you go to the right place, I think you should try it.
Here's the tough thing, and I know it is tough, man. And like, I said this, and like I have, a daughter, I coach athletes. I know you have children, you have another half. And I know to our viewers and the different listeners, people, tuning in, the challenge that I have now is I've seen what happened this last COVID, right? What happened in COVID quarantine. Do you know what went up? Is alcohol use went up. Child abuse went up.
Marital, like domestic
abuse
violence
went up, right? I look at that.
Divorce rate went up.
And again, alcohol is very, very closely related to those. What were we showing our children, right? We were showing them that, again, in these tough things, I'm going to get up and I'm going to drink this. So that's the new normal. That's what we show them. And as much as we've demonized what cannabis does is, cannabis has been known. It's been scientifically proven, not anecdotal, that it helps couples with these things. It helps, like, man, I want to say cannabis saved my relationship, like the ass that I was, like I don't even deserve the chance that I have now, but it was cannabis that kind of helped save that. So, like I again, why I did this, why I'm just grateful and gracious, to have you and just, the ability to talk to, your reach is that, if you can start now, right? If you start now, maybe they don't have that stigma, like the kids or my athletes, people now are going to see this are like, yo, that guy smokes. I want to be like that guy. You know what I mean? Yeah. I'm trying to be like that guy.
Helping release the stigma is a good thing. I just feel like, it just makes people nervous because of past stuff. And the main point of that is if you, and I know you said this, but if you really compare it to the trouble outside of like the selling of drugs, right? Back in the day when you didn't have the dispensaries and the selling of marijuana and the trouble that the drugs created, as far as drug dealers and stuff, because it wasn't legal. Alcohol is much worse for you. And I think that's like the argument too. Like I drink, but I'm just saying that people sometimes look at marijuana like, oh my gosh, it's like so bad. But I'm like, I've never been in a situation where I've been around people who were smoking that it just ended up in a huge brawl.
Facts.
You go to bars, like if you go to a medicinal spot or you around a bunch of people that's smoking, people are chilling. They're like vibing. They listen to the music. I remember I went to Amsterdam, bro. Like, oh my God. Went to Amsterdam. I had a volcano. And then my friend who I was with was like, yo, bring your headphones with your favorite music. Like headphones or like get some really good headphones. I'm like, okay. So we smoked the volcano. Man, I put on my headphones and I turned on this gospel song that I absolutely love. And I got up to go to the bathroom. This shit is funny as hell. So, I get up and go to the bathroom. I'm like super chill, right? So I get up and go to the bathroom and like this woman walks in the bathroom. So I was like, okay, cool. Like, it was one bathroom in the coffee shop is what they call it in Amsterdam. So I'm standing outside the coffee shop, song is playing. And I was like, man, I looked at the guy that, that she was with. I was like, yo, like, how long has she been in there? He's like, about 30 seconds. Like 30 seconds seemed like forever. Like, bro. And I was just like, wow, like I'm, I gotta pee really, really bad, but I was so chill. And the music was like insane. Like the music it elevated the music. I love the word elevation. I think that's a good term, but it elevated the music. And then anyway, so I ended up going to the bathroom. I was just like, wow, like this is crazy. And you have all these people in this coffee shop and it is the chillest vibe. Like we met this woman came up, she started talking to us. It was like chill, a complete different experience than if you were in a bar. Question for you.
Mhm.
We text often and you still talk about the anxiety and the feeling and being able to manage and maneuver your way through the mental stuff. And I first want to commend you because your ability to be aware, it's like, it's less admitting that it's there and just like your awareness and like wanting to continue to make yourself better. How do you define trust and believe?
Trust and believe. I think, you have to, trust, and I guess just believe in some of the convictions or just some of the routines that you set forth. Like I think that at this part, like, and we say my anxiety or just, I never really am going to be rid of the conditions or the dis-ease that I have. But I trust and believe every day that there's a reason why I'm here to continue to go on. I think that's the difference now. I'm very existential. Like I get overwhelmed by just the enormity of life and everything that we're dealing with at times. And she kind of helps me bring it back. And just I think, like you said, the trust and believe. I think that I trust and believe that there's always something worth staying in for. There's always something worth waking up for, having that gratitude for. So that's been the biggest thing for me now, looking for one reason.
I just think it's really powerful, like making people aware to find a reason to, like, for people out there who are struggling. And believe it or not, I mean, you can talk to your doctor. I think it's fine to always go to your doctor before you start something medicinally. But I think the most important thing is like finding that reason, and I think that's what mental health. That's why I'm a big proponent of mental health. I'm like, yo, last week I started feeling tons and tons and tons of anxiety. And I went to Scott, my husband, and I was just like, I have anxiety. And then like, I don't know if it was the next day or like 9 hours later, I'm like, I'm getting these waves. Like it is insane. And then I just emailed my therapist and I was just like, this is what I'm going through. And he was like, he's busy. He's like, I got 30 minutes tomorrow. And we just like did a 30-minute phone call. And it was just like, it eliminated the stress because I just became aware. And it gave me, to your point, it just gave me a reason why I was going through what I was going through. And then he helped me like manage the anxiety. Cause he was like, whether you're super happy and excited to, go jump in a pool, or whether you have anxiety about either being on stage or like having a conversation, he's like, it's all the same feeling. It's just how, like, what are you saying to yourself? And so just to kind of piggyback off of what you were saying, it's like, some people say that, oh, like, I don't have a reason, I don't have a purpose. I'm like, you're saying that because there is a purpose.
Right.
Kind of like in a way backfires, but in like a good way. Like you get the answer in the question is kind of what I'm trying to say, especially because I got on the phone with him or the video conference with him. And I was just like, I just don't know. Like I feel this way and I'm blah, blah, blah. And he was like, well, how do you feel when you're happy? He's like, how do you feel when you're nervous? I'm like, well, it is the same. He's like, so what are you telling yourself? And he's like, you have to give yourself the reason why you're feeling that way and a reason to move forward. So it was really powerful. Charles, I know we spoke a lot about mental health and, marijuana. Do you call it marijuana? Is that fine?
Yeah.
Okay. I like to respect your
Yes,
terms. But, you're a bomb ass trainer. So like tell people how to get in touch with you so they can either train with you or talk to you.
I'm on IG, so Instagram, like Charles_J is like my moniker is Professor X, like, cause I started it, like my daughter was like, that's kind of funny. LinkedIn, whatever. I don't have any other things other than that. I'm working on it, but I say IG, email, Charles Flanagan 002@gmail.com. That's probably the best way.
Well, thanks for being here. I appreciate it. And everybody out there, throughout this year and beyond, I just want to talk about things that either are a little uncomfortable, people don't know about, get guests that may push you outside of your comfort zone to just help you enhance your ability to trust and believe in who you are and just bring whether you can take something away from this personally, like if you're going to a dispensary or not, it's like understanding other people's values, understanding why they value themselves, and hopefully it'll help you enhance who you are, trust and believe in who you are, and add more value to your life. I'll see you next time.